which we're going to actually learn how to use local DB, that is local database or storage in HTML5. So what we have on the screen, you see I've added this Ajax Google APIs.com. So this is actually going to help the page gonna retrieve the data without the page loading. So it's an Ajax helping you to load a part of the page without the entire page loading. So that's why I have this. You can simply get it at Ajax Google APIs.com, and you can get the jQuery, the mini.js. Yeah, at this time I'm using version 1.12, but any version should work perfectly. Okay, let's get started. So first, what we're gonna do is to learn how to use local databases in our HTML. So first, I'm gonna create a form which is gonna save a name and then retrieve the name back on a pop-up model for us to see the information stored inside the input. So first, let's get our forms, and in the forms we're gonna get, first let's have a label, and for our label we're gonna have last name, and then we'll have an input field for our label. So let me, inside the label, which is it says last name, we're gonna have an input for this label, and inside the input we need to have our type, and our type will be simply test. So we're gonna save test data. So and let me have an ID which will be later on used in our JavaScript. So let me say ID, and I'll call it last name. Okay, and then I'm gonna have two buttons. One button will be saving the data, and one button will be retrieving or getting the data out for us. So still inside the form, but outside the label, we'll be having two buttons here. So okay, so the type is obvious, it's gonna be button. So, and then we need to have a class for each of the buttons. So let's say class, the first class is save, and then I'll say save name. Okay, so we'll be having another button for get data. So this will be probably, let's say, access, and for the access we're gonna say get the name you inputted at the top. So get, this can be any input, it doesn't matter. I'm just using the last name for this demo. Then now let's see what we got on the screen. Okay, we got this, but there's no functioning, so we type, nothing happens. Okay, so what we're gonna do is add a simple JavaScript which is gonna make use of the local database. So first we need to have a script tag first inside our head. So we always have, it's good to have the script here. So script. Okay, then inside the script, this is where we're gonna call the local storage. So for the local storage we need to have a simple if statement to check what we are storing in the database. So let me say local storage, so local storage, and then local storage. So if let's use the $, then document. If the document is ready, which is what we are storing. So now we'll have a function, and this function, let me see, this function will have a whole database storage in here. So let me see. Function. So let's have open a close bracket here. So we have document already, then we have a function, and in this function, this is where we're gonna call the class, that is the click. We're gonna use this class to perform an event, which is a click event. So to do that, we use the $, and then we call the class, and we'll say the class is .save. The dot here means it's referring to the class. Then on click, we want to perform another action in there by calling a function. So inside here, we're gonna have a function, and this function will have another curly braces, and in there we need to get the input. So here we'll get input here, and there's the input name. So we'll get an input name. So the variable is last name, which is, so last name. Then this variable will be actually accessing, let me see, yes, we need to access the ID, which is this ID here. So this last name, but this is ID, so we use a hashtag. But for the class, we use a dot, which is here. Calling this is a class, so we use a dot in there. Then we have, so we do dot var, which is dot value, and I have an open and close bracket. Then now after we have the value in there from the ID last name, we will have to store the value we have. And to do that, let me add a comment, store data. Okay, so to do that, we need to call the session storage. So the session will actually store this in a session and then help us to retrieve it anytime we need it. So session storage, and we need to set the item on which we are storing to the last name which we're gonna actually store. So that is the last name, and then bracket last name. Okay, so the last name is actually here, and then the ID here is last name. So as you can see here, so when it stores the last name first, it gets the input from here, which is the value, and then from the ID here. Then after it gets this, now it stores the data, and it stores in a session storage. So let's say the local storage dot set item. So this will be set to, like, inside a database we have like a field. So the last name is a field, and then the title of it, it's gonna be the last name in there. Then this value will be stored in here. So this variable is the one here, and this is what field, which is storing in this session, and then storing it in this variable. Good. So anytime there's an input here, then it goes to the storage data here. Great. So after we have that, let's add an alert to it, and the alert will show something to the user that the last name is stored. So anytime it gets the data, it shows something to the user, so the user knows that what it was inputted was stored or saved. So any of them works perfectly. So let's do save. Then what we have to do is to retrieve the data. So after we have input the data in the variable, and then now we have stored the data in the variable, then it has prompted us of the alert that is being stored. Now we need to create another function which is going to help us retrieve or access the data using this class here. So let me create that real quick. So with the $, then I'm gonna call the the class rather, which is access class, which is here, this access class. And with the access class, we're gonna perform a click event. So dot click, and with the dot click, we're gonna have another function which is anonymous function, and with this function we're gonna have the logic here. So here is retrieving data. Okay, so retrieving data, first what we have to do is to have an alert dialog, which is gonna add some kind of a string, and then now it add the data which we want to retrieve from the local storage. So what we have to do is to create an alert dialog, and inside the alert dialog we're gonna have a simple string which will follow the last name, like hi, maybe do, or hi, any other name. So it's just a string. You don't need to include this, but just for the formatting. So that is a string in the alert, and then we can concatenate with using the plus, and this is where the actual storage retrieve the data for us. So we say local storage dot get the item. So set item here. Now we are getting the item from the local storage, okay, which is this. So now here let's say we want to get last name, get last name, get item, and then here inside let me do So get storage item, the last name. So let me do a last name here. Last name. Okay. Then let's do local storage get. Oh, let me rather do local storage get first name and last name. Yeah, let me get the first name and then the last name, or I can only get the last name. So let me forget about the first name. Let me only get the last name. So let me save this and see what I got on the screen. Let's say this. So your last name is stored using the first function, and then we get, and now, okay, let me see. So now we store the data. We've input some data here, and then we store it back. Oh, okay. So let me use the session storage, since I use the one here. The session storage. Okay, so reload. Is this now? Okay. Still returning now. Okay, let me have yeah, I think I got it. Let me have an empty string here. Okay, for this, let me have an empty string here, and then I'm gonna have a local storage here. So local storage, and then concatenate this one. Then I have the session storage here, and the session storage will get item from the last. Name. Okay, let me see. Now we put in AB. Okay, last name is saved, and then get. Okay, so we get the SB there, which is really good, but we still see the now. No. Take off. Let me see first name here, and then let me refresh, and then do WE. Okay, item is saved, and go get. Okay, we get it. All right, but let me take off this one. Let me take off. Great. So actually that was not needed. One I added here wasn't needed because I'm using the session storage. So since I have stored the data in the session storage by setting the item, I need to get the data from the session storage dot get item using the last name. Okay, so this last name needs to correspond to the one. I wrote a first name here, which I didn't add an extra first name here, so that wasn't really needed at that instant. So since I'm using this last name to grab or store the data, and here I need to get the data from the same last name here. So now it's working perfectly. Okay, so I reload again, and then let's say the name Doe here, then I save. Okay, so the last name is saved, then get. Now we say hi Doe. So this is the hi here, and then here is where we get the Doe. All right, so this is how we actually implement local storage in HTML5. And I know you might not be very familiar with JavaScript, but you can check the beginner's tutorial to JavaScript to learn a little bit about this. But this is how you have to create the local storage using a little bit of an if statement, and you can throw in an else statement if you want to check if there's any error, especially when the browser does not support the HTML5 local storage. Then it's going to tell you that. So to do that, you can add else to it, and with the else you can add something in here like an alert, and this alert will only show when the browser you are using does not support HTML5 storage. So you can say something like browser does not support HTML5 storage. So this is how you can add an else statement to your if statement here. So first it checks the local storage for HTML5. Then when your document is ready, this function is executed, and then when the save button is being clicked, then it takes the value that you have from your last name, which is here. Takes the value from the input here, then it stores it in the session storage.set item, and then it stores the last name inside this one. Then it alerts you that the name is saved when it's successful here. Then the next function, which is .access on click, when there's a click event, and now gives an alert, it writes a hi, then it retrieves the data from this last name here, which is stored inside this value here, to show on the screen. And then here will only show when the browser does not support the HTML. We showed how to use a session storage, but you can also use local storage instead of using the session storage. So to use the local storage, in place of the session, you can simply add local storage. So local storage, then you replace this with what? Local storage instead of session. Session means it's gonna use the session in the browser to actually store it, but this is gonna store in the HTML local database. So that is very easy to implement, and it's either you use any of them, but depending on the project you're doing, then you choose one of them wisely. So the session can have a little bit of a high, the local storage can have more megabyte, and then the session also can be used in another way, which is also more appropriate.